PowerPoint is a wonderful tool for sharing information with others. Most teachers tend to use them in their classroom quite frequently, but unfortunately this quite frequently tends to be a little too much for most students because most teachers only add simple text and have the kids copy them down. I, on the other hand, like to add a whole bunch of images into my PowerPoints and then animate those images, so not only are the kids learning from the words that I put on the screen at the same time, but they're also being a little entertained by the pictures. So to start with, let's talk about how to add pictures into Microsoft PowerPoint. The simple starting way that we're going to begin with is I've already got it set up ready to go here on Google. I've clicked on Images on Google and I've typed in Cartoon Farm Field because that brings up the type of images that I'm looking for. And you see I've already found the picture that I want. So once you've gone through and searched through Google on all these different little tabs here, find the picture that you want, the next step of course is to left click that picture, which will take you to that picture's website here on the bottom, but that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in the image. Now as you can see from the size here, it is going to be a little small, and if we left click on see full size image, it doesn't really get too much bigger from the preview. But for our purposes today, this will work. So to start with, what we want to do is right click this picture, and after we've right clicked the image, our little pop-up box here shows up and we're going to go down to copy. If we go into the PowerPoint that we're going to work with, pull it up, right click again and go to paste, we'll see that our image shows up here in the PowerPoint. Now of course, as you can see, this image is a little small for what we're wanting to work with, so we're actually going to change the size of it. In order to change picture sizes in PowerPoint, if you left click the picture, you'll see all these little white buttons show up and this little green one up here, and the green one we'll use a little later. For now, what I want to focus on is the white ones. As you can see, white ones go all the way around the sides, on the corners, top and bottom. And you notice our cursor, which you can see the different way it looks. Here's our pointer cursor, here's our typing cursor, here's a multi-directional cursor, which is when we left click allows us to move the picture anywhere. But if we move the cursor over these white buttons, you can see that it changes. For instance, on these two side ones, you can see that the white arrow goes left or right. And what that means is if we highlight these little white circles here, just put the cursor over them and left click, we can drag that picture to the right, we can drag that picture to the left, and that's actually going to make it bigger and smaller. You can do the same thing with the top and the bottom, but as you can see, our cursor changes from left to right to up and down. So now we can change it and make it taller, or we can change it and make it shorter, or depends on however we want it to do it. And the last thing that we can do when manipulating the pictures that we're going to talk about in this PowerPoint tutorial is these different corners. You can see once again that our cursor changes, but instead of going left, right, or up and down, it goes diagonally. Whenever you select it diagonally and left click and drag, it's going to change the whole picture at once. It grows to the side and to the top, which is going to make us have a more well-rounded looking picture. Because as you can see, if we just do it from the side, the picture gets a little skewed top and down. So if we do it through the corner wise, we can end up changing it to where we'll move the whole picture at once to make it bigger. So as you can see, I've already got a PowerPoint set up where I've got my field into the background, but of course images from the internet are not the only place to get images for PowerPoint. Most people tend to utilize the clip art feature in Word, and of course this clip art feature does exist in PowerPoint as well. And in order to add clip art to a PowerPoint just with Word, we're going to use these top menu buttons. If you go over and highlight the one labeled Insert, that's going to left click and that's going to drop down our little drop down box for us, and you can see all the different options. The one we want to focus on first is Picture. And when you highlight it, this little black arrow means there's going to be another little box off to the side. So in this little box to the side, we're going to select Clip Art, and when we left click it, we get a little menu box over here on the right hand side. Once this shows up, you can type in what you want to search for. Let's say cat, C-A-T, and hit enter. A whole bunch of cat images shows up. Now PowerPoint draws these images from one of two places. If there's nothing on this picture but the picture, and you can see how there's these little world symbols on these other ones, these two pictures here are being drawn straight from my computer hard drive. These images with the little world icon are being drawn straight from the World Wide Web from Microsoft's database. So as you can see, there's a whole bunch of images to scroll through. They always take just a second to load once you highlight them. Go through, find the image that you want to use, and once you find one that you're happy with, just left-click that image, and it's going to show up here in our PowerPoint. And once again, we've got all these little white dots here that allow us to manipulate our picture as we see fit. I'm going to do the top corner one and make it just a little smaller because that's a little too big for me. We have our image. The other thing I tend to use in my PowerPoints beyond clip art and images found on the internet are sounds. And PowerPoint also has a nifty feature for using sounds. Once again, go to Insert, and instead of doing Picture this time, we're going to do Movies and Sounds. And over on this little sidebar open up box, we can see Movie Clip Organizer and Sound Clip Organizer. And just like with our clip art, when we left click, it opens on the sidebar. We have a couple that are saved in my hard drive, and we have a whole bunch of them being drawn straight off of the internet. So let's look for a violin and hit enter. And that's going to pull up a whole bunch of little violin ones to look at. But of course, when you're looking for a picture, what you see is what you get. When you're looking for sounds, what you see is not what you get. You need to always preview your sounds first. And how you do that is when you find a sound that looks like it's something you'd be interested in, right-click that sound and go up to Preview. And once I left-click on this, it's going to open a pop-up box that when it loads will allow us to hear the sound. And you can hear those little violins playing in the background. It's kind of spooky. I guess that would work for us. So once we found the one we want, we made sure of the sound. We can close this pop-up. Go back over here to the sound, and just like it was an image, left-click it. But instead of just appearing on the screen, it gives us an option. How do we want it to start the sound in the slideshow? Either automatically or when clicked. And since I tend to set up all of my pictures and animations and sounds to all go whenever I set them up to, which is normally automatically, I'll always select the automatic box. And as you can see, I've now got this little bullhorn megaphone image here. I tend to take these and always drag them off the screen to the side a little bit because I don't tend to work with them in my PowerPoint. Once I've put them in here, all I do is just tell them when to play. So as you can see, I already have a PowerPoint set up that I want to work with. I'm going to close this little sidebar here. I've got my little farmer, I've got my little goose, and I've got a golden egg. So if you've guessed goose that laid the golden egg, you'd be 100% correct on what we're going to work with today. So to start with, in this story, the farmer, he has a goose. The goose lays golden eggs. The farmer collects the eggs. He sells them to the market, comes back, waits for the goose to lay more eggs. But of course, eventually, he does get a little tired of waiting. And we're going to animate pretty much the main characteristics of the story. So to start with, before the farmer can collect an egg and sell it, of course, we have to have the goose lay the egg. So what we're going to do is we have our images ready to go, but we're going to start the custom animation phase after we've added them in. In order to do that, you have to left-click the picture that you want to add animation to. Once you've left-clicked it, go ahead and right-click it, and on this pop-up box that shows up, let's go to Custom Animation, which again opens a little sidebar over here on the side. As you can see up near the top, we have a little rectangular box known as Add Effect, and this is where you add your custom animations. So if we left-click this little arrow here, it's going to give us a little pop-up box with 4 choices. Entrance, which is how our image will appear on the screen. Emphasis, which adds emphasis to the image, make it blast or flash bulb or tweeter from side to side, and this just adds emphasis to your actual image on screen. Exit, which is how we have the image disappear. And finally, motion path, which is the direction that we have a picture end up moving in our PowerPoint, and we'll get to that in just a second. So to start with, let's go to Entrance to make our egg appear. And as you can see, it normally gives you about 9, and you've got the chance to choose more effects. But the one I'm looking for is already here, which is called Dissolve In. Now when you found the animation that you're looking for, and you left-click it, if you'll look over here very carefully at the egg, you'll see a little animation that shows you what the egg is going to do as it dissolves in. So left-click and see what it does. We can see it dissolves in, which is perfectly exactly what I want it to do. So after we've had the egg dissolve in, we're going to go ahead and have the farmer collect the egg. And since I've got the farmer already on the screen, I don't have to add an entrance to it, but I do want the farmer to move over and collect the egg, and that's where motion paths come in. So first off, let's left click our little farmer, and we can see he's the image that's highlighted because we've got all these little white buttons again that allow us to change his shape. Go up to Add Effect and go down to Motion Path this time. And on the motion paths, once again, you've got options for more, or you can just go with the ones here, or you can even draw custom paths, which I tend to use sometimes, but they do move a little fast, a little strange looking, so if you don't need to use them, I'd suggest you not use them. So let's go ahead and left click on right, which is going to make the farmer move to the right. Of course, that's not far enough to select our egg. Once you selected that for the farmer, you'll see we now have this little dashed line with a green arrow on the left side and a right arrow on the right side. So if we left click that little dashed line, you can see that just like an image, it's now selected. We've got these little white buttons on either side, and just like with an image, we can change the shape of this motion path to make it longer. So if we left click the one over here by end and drag it all the way over here to where the egg is, when the farmer starts moving at the green and stops moving at the red, he'll now be standing right over the egg, which is where we want him to be. So next, what we're going to do is have him actually pick up the egg. Of course, I personally don't have the capacity to add actual animation like it were a Pokemon or Bugs Bunny cartoon. So instead of actually physically having him bend over and pick up the egg, we're just going to have the egg disappear. Because as we have the egg disappear, that seems to show that he's actually picking it up. So instead of selecting the motion path, let's go back and left click the egg. You can see we've got it highlighted with our dots again, which means whatever animation we choose up here on Add Effect is going to affect the egg. So let's go to Add Effect, and this time do an exit, where we're going to make the egg dissolve out or disappear out or circle out or blind out or fly out or whatever we want it to do. I don't want it to dissolve out, I just want it to flat out disappear, which shows that the little farmer guy has picked it up. So if we left click, we'll get a preview of it again, and we'll see that the egg just immediately disappears, which is exactly what we want it to do. Once the farmer's picked up the egg, our next step is to make the farmer leave the screen because he always has to go to market to sell it. So what we're going to do is instead of selecting the egg, we're going to go back and select the farmer again. Once again, we've got all our little white dots set up, and what we're going to add to the farmer is an exit. But instead of having him disappear out, we're going to have him fly out, just like we will later on have him fly in. So let's have him fly out. That's his exit, is down to the bottom, but we don't want him to go to the bottom. He's moving to the right. Let's keep him moving to the right. So we can manipulate these animations over here in the sidebar. You see that as I'm clicking them, you can see that the pictures all flash with their little numbers. This lets you see what picture the animation you're selecting affects. And when I've selected that animation, we're given three options up here. The start one we're going to work with a little later, so don't worry about that one just yet. What we want to focus on is the direction and the speed. If you noticed, he was moving a little fast for my taste, so we do want to change that. And how you do it is by left clicking this little black arrow here. If we left click it, we get a drop down box with 5 choices: very slow and slow, medium, fast and very fast. And as you can see, the default is already set up for very fast, which is very fast, a little too fast. But of course it's not super fast. So instead of going medium or one of the slows, we're just going to flat out choose fast. And you can see he moves just a little slower than he did. We're also going to change direction. Instead of having him go to the bottom, we want him to go to the right. So again, if we left click on this little black arrow, we get options. We can have him go to the left, and that gives you a little arrow so that you can see what direction he'll be going, to the right, to up, to bottom left. We want him to go to the right. And you'll notice that every time I'm making changes over here on this side, we still get to see a preview. So if we select to the right, we can see that he flies out to the right, which is exactly what we want. Now after the farmer's gone to the market and sold the egg, he always comes back and he patiently waits for the goose to again lay another egg. So of course we're going to need another farmer because we've told this one to leave the screen.